Hello learners, how are you doing? Welcome to today's lesson. This is Nangoma Druscilla. I'm here to take senior ones through a topic of natural hazards in East Africa. Now in this topic, I expect you by the end of the lesson, you must be in position to define for me, to explain to me what is a natural hazard. Thereafter, I shall expect you to describe for me the different natural hazards in the areas that you stay in. Now, is there a possibility that you've experienced these natural hazards? If so, we are going to identify what is a natural hazard. Some of you could be mistaken into thinking that what you experienced was a natural hazard, yet in actual sense it was not a natural hazard. So what is a natural hazard? Anything that is occurring naturally and it is an unusual event and causes negative impacts on the lives of people. It can destroy property and it can cause a trigger in the environment is what we are calling a natural hazard. That is how I'm defining it. An unusual event that causes negative effects on people's lives. It destroys property. It can also cause a change in the environment. So when I talk of natural hazards, do we have natural hazards in East Africa or in Uganda here where we are? Oh yes, we do. And these can be in form of floods. I think most of you are in areas that have experienced floods before or you've heard of them. We have landslides, we can have earthquakes. Natural hazards can be in form of droughts and lightning. So let's look at those areas. Oh, do you know anywhere where we have floods, for example, landslides, or have you heard of an earthquake occurring anywhere? That is going to be our major gist of today's lesson. So when I talk of a flood, I am meaning an overflow of large amounts of water on the earth's surface. Water simply submerges beyond its limits and we see a lot of water existing in an area. In Uganda, it is very common, especially those staying in Kasese region. We see River Nyamwamba, where its banks can get over flooded due to the especially now when it is raining, we see an overflow of water in the areas near River Nyamwamba. Those who stay in Kasese can relate to that. We still have floods occurring in Sironko district, in Bundibujo, and even those areas around Lake Choga. Those are the areas most prone to floods. You realize that floods occur when the rainfall has increased. Yes, basically that is it about the floods. In the picture we are seeing, we're having floods here in Kampala, especially in the recent increase in the precipitation levels. We see floods occurring in Kampala. So those that have been to the central part of Kampala, I think we can see how it hinders the transport. So many property are destroyed, people's houses are displaced and broken. So that is the impact. That is how far-reaching the impact of floods can be. Other areas that have floods could be in Butaleja district in eastern Uganda. Those that stay there, I think you can relate. We've experienced the floods before. So basically, floods are another natural hazard that also destroys crops. It can hinder transport. It can destroy communities and people's houses. So we realize that natural hazards, in as much as they occur naturally, they have negative impacts. Then let's look at another natural hazard, which we mentioned as our landslides. So what is a landslide? A landslide occurs when the earth, rock, it can be a rock, it can be soil, flipping over or collapsing from a cliff or from a mountain. Now these landslides are very common, especially in the rainy seasons. The most recent area where we experience landslides in Uganda is Bududa region. The Bagishu can relate to that. In the southwestern slopes of mountain Elgon, that is in eastern Uganda, where we see about 35,000 families were displaced because of that prominent and big landslide. So landslides are also another set of occurring natural hazards. Let's look at another natural hazard. So over here is a picture of landslides. This is Bududa typically. Those that stay along the Mount Elgon slopes, we can relate with this landslide. This landslide occurred in 2018. So let's look at another natural hazard, and that is the earthquake. When I talk about an earthquake, I'm looking at a sudden stress or change in the earth. It can be a trigger caused by it can be caused by a volcanic eruption, it can be caused by tectonic movements, or even man. You can trigger the fault lines of the earth, and that can cause a vibration, a sudden shake. And sometimes the shake is very vigilant, or it is very big, it is very impactful. And the recent one in Uganda, we must have realized, those who stay in Rubirizi district in 2020, by the way, that is October. In the recent times, we had an earthquake that caused a little trigger. Usually in Uganda, good enough, we have not had those very big landscapes. But when you go to other areas, in other countries like India, in countries like Korea, we have these prominent earthquakes that will cause massive damages. So an earthquake can break down a building. Just imagine the earth shaking, vibrating, If it is an unfinished building, it can crumble down and fall. So we have earthquakes destroying a lot of our buildings. Let's have a look at another natural hazard, and that is a drought. When you hear the word drought, what do you mean? What do you think? Think of a long period of dry conditions, a long spell of no rainfall. That's what I'm defining as a deficiency in precipitation. And this usually causes water shortage. This kind of situation is common in the northeastern regions of Uganda areas. People in Karamoja, I think you can relate to that. People in Kotido, in Gulu, in Arua. That is why these people basically carry out nomadic pastoralism. Their agriculture levels are very low due to the lack of rainfall. Maybe we can look at the impact. The impact of this drought is that it can drain all the moisture from the soil, and then we see all the plants drying. Okay, so in a long spell of drought, you can still have food shortage because the crops can dry before even they reach their maturity levels. So another and last one we are going to look at is the lightning. I think all of us have witnessed a lightning. Whenever it is about to rain or when it is raining, we see that camera-like light coming from the clouds. So this, and in most cases, girls usually fear this one. So it is a powerful electrical charge made during the landscape. What happens is that the electrons in the atmosphere, in the cloud up there, come into contact with the other electrons on the ground, and when the two meet, it creates what you're calling that lightning. In Uganda it occurred, and 10 children were struck by light. So don't play around it. That's why they usually say when it is raining, keep your phones off. The electrons in the atmosphere that causes the lightning can now meet with the electrons on the phone, and it can be deadly if it gets you. So lightning is also another common natural hazard. I think we've seen this kind of situation. It is very common, especially when in situations where we have thunderstorms or when it's about to rain. So my dear students, those are the 5 natural hazards. We still have others. In other countries, you can have tornadoes, you can have thunderstorms, we have tropical storms, we have volcanic eruptions. In Uganda, we don't have them. In East Africa, basically we don't, because most of our mountains are dormant. But if you go to areas that have active volcanic mountains, they experience volcanic eruptions. So that is it for today's lesson. Thank you very much for listening through. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button on the right. Okay, then please submit your work, that the assignment that I've given you on your Google Classroom. The code is given to you. Thank you so much. We meet in our next lesson. Have a beautiful